My philosophy on development has worked at several of the companies that I have worked with, but not been well received at others. I believe in doing rapid prototyping to prove that something's possible, and then quite possibly scrapping that and starting over to rebuild it the right way with all of the error handling, all of the special cases, and all of the user experience that it needs in order to actually be put into deployment. When I worked at Microsoft, our CTO, Jim Baldwin, would often do this, and I thought it made a lot of sense. He would go home in the middle of the night, fix a problem in 6 hours with a code patch, and prove that that would in fact work. And then somebody else would be handed the task of saying, this is code that needs to be integrated, it needs to pass all of our debugging, it needs to fit within the memory requirements of the set-top box, all of those things. And they would then be tasked with doing all of that. And quite often they would be a little annoyed that they had been handed this bit of code and that their role was really to fix the code rather than develop the code in the first place. When I worked at Howcast, I had a very good relationship with the engineering team, and they enjoyed working with me in that style. I would often write code very quickly in PHP, prove that the code could be used the way that it needed to be done, develop an algorithm, and then because they were a Ruby on Rails shop, they would go through and convert my PHP code, basically as a requirements document, to Ruby on Rails, with all the necessary user experience, UI, and error handling that I hadn't necessarily put into my version of the prototype. Based on that style, I have been able to work with companies and really move things forward quickly. But I also understand that in some organizations that doesn't work. If you're working with a team that is creating code for an outside company, often building the prototype lends that outside company to believe that they are closer to finished than they really are. They don't understand that you haven't put in any error handling, or that the code may not be stable, or that the memory requirements may be too high with the method that's currently being used. So that is a bit of a challenge, but I can adapt my philosophies on that as needed. Generally, I am not the person who's going to be writing code 8 hours a day. I can manage people who are writing code full-time. I can write product requirement documents till the cows come home. I can put together sample code. I can do all of those kinds of things. And I definitely have a deep understanding of how code works. It's just that my philosophy on development is that I am better spent planning, revising, and even developing test cases to make sure that code works the way it's supposed to, rather than spending all day writing the code. The other thing that I think I bring to an engineering organization that is heavy on development is that because I speak a very wide set of languages, I know it's possible in each of those languages and where those strengths come in. This means that sometimes I will build cross-language solutions, building an API in one language in order to get around something that's very hard in another language. Some languages process SOAP objects better than others, and so if you're working with a SOAP scenario where you're communicating with another company's API, sometimes building a middleware in another language can make the development process much faster for that early prototyping, or as a stopgap for something that is going to take a very long amount of time but wouldn't have a very high return on investment. I've had to do this quite a few times in the IPTV space because we received metadata in different formats and needed something that could translate from those formats or could interface with a catcher, which is a content delivery device that pulls things off of satellites. And what you could run or how you could interface with that catcher varied. So I think that one of the things that I really bring to the table in a development company is that ability to solve a problem regardless of the limitations of the language that is the primary platform, and the expectation that anything is possible. I think that too many people that have been in engineering for a long time get jaded by what isn't possible. And my belief is that given the amount of time and the right tool, I can build anything you can dream up, especially if I can find the data sources in order to do it.